Bam, and we are good. Okay. All right. Hey there, my name's Liam Jones. I'm a comic creator from Toronto, and I am talking to Mark Bernal today, who I've known for a year or so, maybe more. I've watched him grow his comic book business called Lesser Known Comics, and it's a real pleasure to talk to this guy. He is a vet. I'm talking about him in front of his face, behind his back. He's listening to me, so I'm getting the little giggles. He's a father. He's a husband. He is a vet. He's a lover of comics. He's a dude. He always vapes when he interviews, and he's doing the interview circle, so he might be a little tired, but I'm going to try to get some energy out of him. Mark Bernal, you are the man. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, nice to meet you.
What's up?
Yes, and I definitely haven't been wearing the same shirt for 48 hours. So.
Definitely not. Well, I can smell it through the internets. The internets can carry that kind of data. Yeah, man. Wow. So I was thinking, we were just talking before, and my thought on this interview is to not talk shop too much. We're going to talk about what it's like, or well, not what it's like. We're going to talk to people who don't know much about comics. They want to read comics. They want to find out how to buy comics. They go to the comic store and they're like, how do I sort through this? Like, what do I do? And you're an independent comics creator, which is like, indie people are the people. I'm just saying, if you don't like indie music or indie comics, you're just not cool. I'm sorry. It's not the case. You have to get in there and you check out what all these like local creators are doing, because guys like you, Mark, you're like, as far as I can tell, you have mainstream comics, which are just a big business, and they're catering to markets, and everything is really systematized and kind of cutthroat, and there's a corporate aspect to it. And they produce amazing stuff. Look at Marvel movies, this kind of thing. But then you have independent comics creators, and they're a wild card, because that's where things like The Walking Dead came from. Indie comics creators who have a little bit of experience, but they just have an idea, and they were writing it in their basement on a card table, and they just got into it, and then all of a sudden, boom, you have this amazing thing. And I think this is the kind of ground where that kind of stuff comes from. So I've talked with you over a couple of different comic creations, like Yuriko, that just had its wrap up. Doug Knight, who does a bunch of like really street level type graffiti, inside your head weirdness, psychedelia. I mean, amazing projects that you would not find from someone like Marvel or Disney or DC or what have you. What are your thoughts? What do you think about the indie world?
Yeah, so I compare what's going on in the indie comic scene to where music was in like the early 2000s, right? Where all of a sudden you had like a bunch of musicians who were just like, you know what, we're sick of the five album record deal where we only have one good song on each record, because we got to like spread this out. We have to put one really vanilla chart topping hit on every single album. We just want to make the music that we want. And things like Warped Tour, kicked off, where like you'd have these giant festivals where all this underground music was like taking place. And I think we've got part of that right now in the indie comic scene, where there's nothing wrong with DC and Marvel, but it is like top 40 music, right? You look at it and you're like, sometimes you're like, where's the soul in this thing, right? Like, was this written by a board of people rather than like one person throwing their heart, sweat, and soul like into like a passion project? So we're kind of spread to the scattered across the wind right now, like as a bunch of indie creator community. But there are awesome people like Comics Wellspring. They're doing something called the Comics Unity Project, where they're sponsoring artist alleys at comic conventions, to really like unify the scene. And I think we're probably 5-10 years away from having like huge conventions that are all indie focused, and it's all underground, and kind of mirroring what we saw in the indie music scene.
Man, let's say that you made it big. You had a comic that kind of like hit Walking Dead status or whatever, and lesser known comics became really, really well known comics. Oops, that's why I turned off my phone. You got it. Happened to you. Good times.
I thought it was
I
muted.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's like happened to me a couple of times, and I'm like, oh, bro, sorry. Anyway, it's no big deal. I mean, it happens in all the interviews these days. Um, yeah. So let's say lesser known comics becomes really well known comics and super successful, right? Something hits. What, how are you committed to the indie scene, or do you see the indie scene as kind of a stepping road to becoming like a corporation of your own vision? Let's say, best case
I
scenario.
think I think what I want and what's starting to happen right now is so Digital Lizards of Doom was a book that we were publishing, and they got picked up by a bigger publisher, and that was that was great because those bigger publishers, um, they have the infrastructure for worldwide distribution. They have partnerships with animation studios and things like that, so that there's more opportunity now for Digital Lizards of Doom to go on and do amazing things than I could have provided as an indie publisher. Um, we joked around, Gabe Valentine, the creator of Digital Lizards of Doom. We said it's like when your hot ex gets married. It's like I'm really happy for you, but I guess sex is out of the question now. So, um, and but the cool thing is that that book went to the publisher. He did not necessarily go to the publisher, right? He can still come back and create something underground, something very like raw and real, and he'll publish it under lesser known comics, and maybe a different publisher will pick it up someday. My goal is not so much to grow lesser known comics to be one of the big guys. It's more of a place where I want to be like the AAA team. You can get drunk and still play 9 innings, and then our people will get picked up, to go play in the majors. And what I do also imagine, if there is any growth, I'd imagine there's going to be a creator that gets their start in lesser known comics, then they go out on their own, they make another studio or another publishing group, and that thing's going to get massive. Like because there's so much talent and so much drive and vision, among these folks. But I think lesser known comics is always going to be uh, uh, keep that punk rock ethos, where um, we don't want to be invited to prom. We're too cool for prom.
You can have your own parties, but they start at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
How about this? So how can people buy your comics, and how many comics do you have out there in the world?
I want to say there's 13 and a graphic novel that's currently in our collection. We had 4 graphic novels, but 3 of them.
13 different comic titles and a graphic novel, or 13, like where are
Yeah.
you with this?
Oh, let's see here. Okay. Oh, here's all the book. So here's a
Woo!
good sort of the books, and these actually not all of them. So one of the difficult parts about you know putting out comic books is we just picked up.
Let me get big on that. Hold on. Run that. I think we got quality here.
There we
Yeah.
go. Let me pull these back up. Yeah, the we got 4 new books just at the end of this summer. I thought I was going to take the summer off, kind of like slow down, but folks like Doug Knight were like, "Nope, I'm publishing my book now." A guy by the name Chris Wigan, he's got a super successful book called Tights. He said, "I want to bring it to lesser known comics." Okay, and then a guy by the name Jade Louder. He's got 2 comics. It's a horror show, number 1 and 2, that he was
I
like,
like the inking on
hey,
that. That's a really cool style. Nice
he's
blocky.
yeah, he's got a lot of talent, and what it feels like is, I don't know, almost like what you'd see in the inside of someone's like notebook in
Oh,
school,
come
but
on.
it's
That's
it's
Teenage Mutant Ninja
so.
Turtles quality right there, man. That's
Oh
that's
yeah.
teenage, like, have you looked at the early Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah. Kill it.
yeah, but yeah, it's got and um there's some things, some types of jokes, some types of humor, some types of storylines and things like that won't necessarily make it into the big guys, and that's where we come in, where you know like, for example, Tank McGregor, which absolutely in love with that book. It was down on his luck bounty hunter, that's trying to hunt a murderous sex robot. Like, that most likely is not going to fly with one of the big two, but it certainly has a home, at Lesser Known Comics.
That's such a great comic, and it's hilarious, man. Ray Garza, he's a writer, man. He's a writer and an artist. What a guy.
Try to find, there we go. There's the
Yeah.
issue 0 version. Yeah.
Book 2 is
Amazing
coming out,
art.
right? He's almost got that thing done. Book 2.
Yes. Yeah, it's completely done. It just needs to be colored, and he's doing some edits on some of the dialogue. I think it must be intimidating because Mechanical Menace was so funny that he feels like he's got to meet it with Cosmic Colossus, and I think sometimes too, when you've read the same joke over and over because you've been working on this book for so long, you can't tell if it's still funny.
I think he's a natural.
Yeah.
Did you see the ad that him and I like? So I asked him, "Hey, can you? I want to do a little commercial for our interview," and so I sent him a bunch of ideas, and we were just bantering. And I said, "Why don't we do this?" And then he sent me back this thing about sheds. Like, why don't I do an ad about sheds? So here's the ad. This show could totally happen without the following sponsors. Sheds. Are you looking to start a business in a war-torn country? Sheds. Listen to what Roman has to say.
Buy shed from Roman. Good for kidnapping. Buy shed from me.
Sheds.
You can put tool in there. You can put kidnapping or that guy. Nobody know.
Sheds. Victims not included, and all sales are final.
So good. Roman looks like the guy who would sell you that shit.
I got a guy, the voice who did that. That's my friend. He's from Poland, and he loves that kind of humor. So I was like, man, this is right up your alley. Do this. So yeah, I made that little dumb thing. It's good times. Good times.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ray's comic is like, that's up my alley because it's sci-fi. I love everything spaceships, robots, whatever. I'm in, like full commitment. Like the dark stuff is great too. Like there's a spot for that, but man, I keep coming back to robots. I can't help it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of lines that, I think a lot of people's favorite part of Tank McGregor Mechanical Menace was the "show me your blam blam face," and he was like, that was such a throwaway line, and or just the stupid things where like he liked the cigarette with his gun, and he was like, oh, people are gonna think this is dumb, and like he went on like interview after interview, and they're like, oh my god, my favorite parts were, and so it's got to be really hard.
I love the bongos. The bongo comment got me. I died. I couldn't handle it. It was so funny.
Yeah,
man.
I've seen a couple pages. He's got some gems in the next one, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, man. Serious. Let's see. What else can I ask you? How about you? So what's on your mind these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think with start, I did not expect to start a comic book company. If someone told me in early 2020, you're gonna have a comic book company, you're gonna have 20 plus creators, you're gonna have over a dozen books, this, that, and the other thing, like I would just been like, I don't know what you're talking about. And two, even if like I wanted to do that, like how would any of that be possible? And so now kind of been thrust in this position where there's a lot of people I'm working for, because I feel like it's not a relationship where the creators work for me. I feel like I work for people like Ray Garza and David Lujan and Doug Knight, right? Like they have their book, they did their part. My part is now to show this book to as many people as possible and carve the way for them to continue making awesome comic books. And that requires having some vision, and saying, okay, like not only like what are we going to do to manage day-to-day operations, but what are we going to be 3, 5, 10 years from now, and how do we get there? And that's been something that's not new for me because I've done this like in other ventures in my life, but it's definitely been something where we're starting to partner with more people outside of like lesser known comics to like say, okay, well, you're successful, and maybe I don't want to do exactly what you're doing, but there's certain things about your business, or certain ways about how you make comics, or certain things about how you guys are organized, and I'm super like, I admire a lot. So working with folks like Comics Wellspring, been working with another publisher called Snowy Works, a guy by the name of Dan Price who does Bigfoot Knows Karate.
I love
And
Dan. Dan's great.
Dan is fantastic, and people like Dan. We were at Houston Comic Palooza, and he pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, Mark, you got to do more conventions." He's like, uh, and I was making excuses as to why I couldn't, and he's just not having it. He's like, no, like that's all garbage, like you got to do more conventions, and really surrounding yourself by people like that who kind of no, like the only person who can get in your way is you, and definitely like holding you accountable and things like that. So it's been positive. So as I look to kind of expand that in 2023, we had talked a little bit about, we have these creator meetings that are internal to lesser known comics, you know, um, but inviting other creators that are not necessarily affiliated with lesser known comics to come and join, come and like poke holes in our plan, learn from us to whatever extent we have, some insight to provide, but then also, provide insight where they say, hey, you guys don't see the whole picture. Here's the whole picture, and give us some perspective that we would be totally lost with, lost and wouldn't have, without their insight.
So nowadays, 12-year-olds are different than when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I found a comic store. It was in Scarborough at Kingston Road in Markham. That's where it was. And it was called Ye Old Collector's Shop because we're English and we love the Queen up here. And I would bike over to that place. I hate the Queen. I have no love for the Queen. Anyway, so she died. I can't be like that. Anyway, I am like that, whatever. So I would bike to this comic store every year. I would get $20 and I would go there and I would sift through all these different X-Men comics and anything that had really good art. That's where I discovered Jim Lee. I discovered Jim Lee when he was doing Punisher War Journal. I was like, this guy's amazing. Wow, what did he do? And then I found that he did Alpha Flight before that, and that was from Canada. Anyway, so I would just go to this comic store, and that was my life. And like that was me at 11, 12 years old. I was like committed, right? And at that point, I decided that I wanted to be an artist. Nowadays, 12-year-olds are like video game fanatics. Maybe they start working out if they're into like all this like guy culture, that's kind of a counterculture thing to everything else going on. But it seems to me that kids aren't really plugged into politics too much. What they love is video games, and video games. I don't know what else. What is so like comic books? I'm sure they would still love that, but they have to know how to get it, and it's probably going to come through like a delivered to your door type service or whatnot. What do you think? What do you think about like kids buying comics, and how can you help them?
Yeah. So, comic book shops have always been important, but they used to also have comic books in the grocery store. You wouldn't have the entire run of every, issue, but that was the way that you get the kids hooked. It's right there next to the toy section, or maybe pretty close to like the checkout counter. So after you bug your mom or dad, at the grocery store the whole time, they're like, fine, here, take this comic book, to shut you up. And then you're like, oh, you see Wolverine for the first time, or you see, Batman for the first time. You're like, oh my gosh, now I need more of this. And that leads you into the comic shop to get more. So I think at that point, the people who are running those major publishers, DC and Marvel, they understood that you can't wait for customers to come to you. You have to go out and find them, and target that audience. So, some of the places that we're hoping to, reach out to more comic book readers, I think comics go hand in hand with a lot of counterculture stuff, skateboarding, underground music and things like that. So, we're making some moves to try and partner with, skateboard brands, or with musical acts and stuff like that. We're doing a punk rock anthology, coming up with Apollo City Comics. And I was lucky enough to get permission from a guy by the name Joey Cape. He played in a band called Lagwagon and Bad Astronaut to use their, lyrics in, the comics that we make. And, hopefully people who are fans of that music, are also fans of comic books. They typically exercise that same part of the brain where they
Oh, they
want
go
art.
together. They totally
Yeah.
go together. Yeah.
So I'm excited for that because you just can't wait around and just hope people are just going to stumble upon your stuff. I think you go fishing in those deeper parts of the ocean.
So kids can't find your comics in the stores yet because that whole like system of business doesn't seem to be going our way right now. Someone, hopefully like Diamond Comics or whatever, is going to actually start doing something about getting comics in front of people again. Or they can just buy them online. Like Comixology is where I tend to buy most of my stuff, where I vet it first and then I'll go out to the store and buy it, or I'll buy it on Amazon because of the shipping fees. Like if you want to buy a comic for $5, you can have a $20 shipping fee. So now you got like a $25 comic. Was it worth it? No, that's why it's not working. Right.
Yeah. So there's a new platform called Global Comics with an X that's trying to be an independent alternative to Comixology. Comixology has some, um, I'll just say, issues by being such a large platform that it's not necessarily conducive to indie creators. It's more focused on now being a vehicle for DC, Marvel, and Image. But that's a good online platform. Going direct to consumer through Kickstarter or through the website, or at conventions. If you talk to most indie comic book creators, 90% of what they're bringing in is coming from either Kickstarter or from conventions. It's a weird thing that somebody's, I would say, easily 50 times more likely to pick up your book via Kickstarter than come to your website and buy it there. It's
Yeah.
kind of a weird thing.
Platforms. It's all about those platforms, right?
Yeah, and the brick and mortar stores, I can't blame them for not wanting to pick up indie comics because they want something that's a run. Their real estate on their shelves is very valuable, so they want a comic that they know it's going to be around for a long time, that already has a track record of performing, that comes with a business that has a marketing budget and things like that. So unless you're local to the area, like Ray Garza was able to take Tank McGregor and go to a couple of shops in the Austin area and get them to have the book on the shelf. And he can do stuff like show up for signings, to do promotion, for things like that. But outside of your hometown, it's really hard to get the books on the shelves. And then even at that, the comic book shops, they need a markup value, right? So they're not going to buy your book, at retail price. They're going to buy it at 55% the retail price so that they can sell it for the value. So you can bust your butt to get them into a bunch of comic book shops and then find out that, okay, I'm only making, 5 cents per book, which works if you got nationwide and worldwide distribution and you have
If
a
it's
whole
scaled,
apparatus.
yeah, that's great
Yeah.
money, but it's got to
Uh-huh.
scale, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Business. It's
Stuff
a
I
tough
never
business.
never thought I know about, right? And
It's a tough business, but it's a cool business because you're making stories, you're making art, you're dealing with artists, you're going to conventions, which are like the coolest, possibly the coolest thing you can do with your life is go to comic book conventions and get into that like weird and wild culture, you know. It's got so much awesomeness to it, but it's a business. It's like any other. So would you say that lesser known comics has become like a marketing company, or is it still a creator company?
I think we've become in one case like a megaphone, So when I talk to creators, um, they can come over to lesser known comics, but if they don't know how to speak, loudly, clearly, concisely, into that megaphone, it may not do them the favors, that they were hoping, and we learned that early on. I think we worked with some folks who came over and thought, okay, all my problems are solved. I got a publisher now, so I just need to turn in a book, and then I'll just wait for the money to come in. And I think we do a lot to promote books that other bigger publishers don't do. I talked to one of my buddies, Morgan Quaid. He puts out books with Black Caravan and a couple other like bigger. And he said, they're expecting you to do a lot of the promotion on your own. So even the fact that Lesser Known Comics like offers that microphone is like a huge leg up. Now it's not as big of a microphone as some of these publishers, but it's certainly not nothing. So if somebody shows up and they got some skills on social media, like they don't have to be great at it, they just have to be decent and active, it'll go a lot further. But yeah, we learned that, it doesn't come easy to everybody, right? Because a lot of artists are introverted people, so they don't, talking about themselves and going and doing interviews or being on
That's
Instagram
a whole
Live.
thing. The whole artist personality. The artists are a bag of cats. Sorry, I didn't mean to run over you, but I did mean to run over you. Because artists are bizarre people, and just like looking at my own, like dissecting my own psychology over the course of years, of my 47 years of wisdoms. Yeah, man, it's like they're just a bag of cats. And you have all this stuff because you've focused all of your life learning how to do a skill, drawing, and now all of a sudden you need to learn a little bit of writing, and you need to learn public speaking, and you need to learn social media savvy. And you're like, well, if I'm doing all of this stuff, I might as well do it, as my own creator. And I hear that a lot. I hear a lot of people say, well, since I need to do all this stuff, I should do it all myself anyway. Great, that's awesome. That means you're an entrepreneur. But then once you do that, then you're no longer really going to be drawing or writing anymore. Now you're going to be doing all the business side of things. So I think what it is when you come to a company like Lesser Known Comics, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Mark, you still do those kinds of things, but you're not doing it alone, and you're going to allow yourself more time to be a creator.
Yeah, and I think where we can also provide the value is if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to expend way more energy doing things that are blind shots in the dark, and we can provide some insight where it says, okay, if you only have 30 minutes a day, here's where the best place to put your energy towards promoting, because you can spend 2 hours promoting your stuff a day, but if you're not doing it the right way, it could be less effective than somebody who does something for, 15, 20 minutes every morning.
Right.
And there's some ways to get around it too. Like, one of the smartest ideas I saw, one of our creators, Abel Garcia, he's out there in Spain. His wife handles a lot of his social media stuff, so she sees what he's working on, and she's like, yeah, that's cool. That needs to go to the internet, and gets it posted and blah, 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 and that's smart. Because
Brilliant.
it's really hard to be in the zone working and be like, now let me get my phone and take a video. So I've made that recommendation to a couple people, especially like a lot of us, your spouses are on the phone, all day long.
God bless wives, man. Oh, I want one. I want a wife.
It could be your roommate. Great. It could be your buddy, right? Because another thing too is what's cool to you as a creator, or what's cool to a consumer may be mundane to you, like, some people are like, why would I take a time-lapse video of me doing some inking, like that's boring, tedious work, whereas somebody who's on the consumer end is like, oh, this is really cool, like, it's cool to see this portion of the puzzle.
Yeah, what I've loved is I got an Instagram because of a friend of mine, a young guy who's a rapper, and I swore off of all social media. I'm has my volume really awful? Sorry about that.
No, it's good.
Okay. Yeah. So I had sworn off of social media because of all the politics and everything. I have no interest in arguing politics with anybody. I have my beliefs and they're very strong. So anyway, I was like, screw this. I'm done with Facebook. I'm done with everything. And then he's like, no, man, you should go over to Instagram because like you can still do all of your art there and it's more friendly and everything. So I did. And at first I hated it. And then I slowly started to clue into like all of the artists that I love are on this thing. Everyone. Jim Lee is on it, Mark Silvestri, all the comic creators, all the painters that I love, all my local artists that are like from Guelph and wherever else, abstract painters, they're all on here. All the concept artists that I follow are amazing, you know, designing video games and whatever. It's like, this place is amazing. And then I got addicted to it. And then I started making my own videos. And I'm like, Instagram is the Shazna. This is the best. This is really good. And then after a while, I started posting my own little stupid videos. And now it's like, I have to watch it. I have to like regulate my time, make a video kind of regularly and do all this kind of stuff. I don't know where I'm going with this. How did I get into this? See, Instagram is a bottomless well that just draws you in, and then you just get stuck there. You can't come out because it's so awesome. Everyone's on there.
Yeah. I think that's the danger of a lot of social media, right? Because it can be a reflection of success, right? So you see your follower count go up, or you see the number of likes, you know, number of comments and things like that. And you know, you do the thing that you're measuring, right? So if you're measuring selling comics, you'll get out and sell comics. If you're measuring pages that you want to be completing every week, you'll knock that out. If you start to measure the things that you're doing on social media, oh, this is how many posts I have, this is how many likes, this is how many followers and things like that, then you know you'll start devoting your time to that, and which is good. It's a part of the equation. But you know, there's people out there who have tens of thousands of followers and don't sell any comic books, you know. And if you need to sell those comic books in order to have the budget to continue creating comic books, you know, it's like, cool, you did really good on social media, but where we got to come back to, like, we're here to make comic books. So, you know, it can be a means to an end, but it's certainly not an ends in itself, you know, of racking up follower counts or just making, you know, badass reels and stuff like that. And I'm guilty of it too. I was, you know, like, my wife was giving me a hard time. She was like, how long are you going to spend on this trailer that you're making for your new comic that's coming out? You know, it's just like, it's only going to live for 20 seconds, right? Like, as a reel on Instagram. Like, how perfectly matched up do the sound effects and like the transitions have to be? You know, it's not even the comic book. It's a trailer for a comic book that's going on social media. It's going to live for a moment in time and then no longer be a thing.
I'm with you though. I love video creation. I think it's great. I think really what video is, it's like, it's a continuation of comic books. I mean, comic books are a movie that's just a series of stills, basically. And the form of it can bring you to the same place that a movie will, but in a way that you can relive just by picking up the book and reading it again. Right. So it's like a movie where you don't need to have a TV or any power. And it's like, I like that. When you make a reel, I think we're just scratching the surface on what social media and what the access of this thing here can do for people who have a love of comic books, in my opinion. So I don't think it's wasted, but I think it needs to be controlled. Like, you can't spend all of your time, you know, doing video editing when what you really love is either writing or drawing. And I struggle with that. That's like my number one thing, because I'll go into the rabbit hole of that. You know, I think it's about temperament. People who can regulate and compartmentalize their life. I'm going to spend 2 hours today doing this, and then I'm going to transition into this next thing here, and then I'm going to do this interview, and that's great. That's a great skill set to have, you know, for an artist or a creator. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I'm a big, like, Buddhist hippie when it comes to a lot of those things, because you know, everything, you know, in the Buddhist philosophy is like middle path, right? It's like, you know, you don't want to do it too little, you don't want to do it too much. It's always like charting the middle path, and with everything too, as you make those mistakes, the mistake in itself is a setback, but the worst thing you can do is dwell on that mistake. You know, like, I went down the the Reddit rabbit hole for too long or the Instagram rabbit hole for too long. And yes, that was a problem in itself, but now you're beating yourself up for it.
And then you're just wasting time beating yourself. Like, why flog yourself? What are you going to be, a Catholic? Come on, stop.
Yeah. So, see it, try and have as little judgment towards it, and, move on from it and try and learn from it where you can, because yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all cave people, right? With like, living in modern times. So yes, phone shiny, yeah, phone shiny distraction. Like we've all been there. So many times I picked up the phone to like DM somebody, because like, oh, I gotta get this thing done. I gotta pick up the phone, open up Instagram to DM somebody, and I'm like, ooh, that's a funny reel. I like that. And it's like and I'm just like, and then 20 minutes later, it's like, what was I doing? Like I have no idea.
What's your favorite kind of reel right now?
I'm obsessed with these guys. They're called Thrash and Raid. They're a skateboard company out of California, and a lot of them, like me, they're military veterans, and they just come up with just like the funniest self-deprecating reels, where maybe they're anguishing about like the fact that a bunch of little kids, were showing them up at the skate park, and they're like, I don't want to go back there. Those little kids are gonna be there and they're gonna make fun of me, like it's just real, and it's just like such my humor, and I just like, man, these guys are just like killing me every day, just really funny stuff. And we're hoping to work with them on some comic book stuff in the not too near future, because skateboards and comic books. I
love it. I love it. You're bringing it together, man. I got a similar thing. My favorite kind of reel these days are like drummers, people who are just like in their place. They have their setup and they do like some funky, awesome rhythm thing, and then that becomes a sound, which is like the catalyst for a reel. Sometimes you'll make the reel based on a sound. And so for time lapses, you have like an awesome funk rhythm, or a loop or something, and you do a time lapse of an art. So it really like works for me to do that. But I just love all the music on reels these days, like the independent creators. It's so cool.
Yeah. Stuff too. Like, some people have that music part figured out. The theme song for Tank McGregor, like, just
so good.
It gets me so hyped. I might make that my ringtone in the morning.
It's like that's what's the word? Synthwave. Just synthwave. I went through a synthwave kick because there's YouTube channels dedicated to that, where you just have like some 80s style graphic of a car like driving down a digital highway with like the sun in the back, and you just have that kind of music. And it's so sci-fi. It's great, and it's campy, and it's retro. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's those old racing video games where all you see is the horizon, and you got the road,
It's the best. Pole position. Come on, pole position was amazing from my generation. Like I was the '90s. You're a little younger than I am. I'm 47. How old are you?
I'm turning 38 this year. So
38. Yeah, I got about 10 years. I got almost exactly 10 years. So yeah, you're like early 2000s. I'm like 90s, man. And the video games. Yeah. Like they went from 8-bit to 16-bit and then 6-bit to 24-bit. And but it was the same kind of vibe. It was awesome. Oh, totally. It was such a great time to be a kid.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I remember, slumber parties and being like, because you couldn't save games back then, so you'd have to like spend all night finishing this video game.
I remember that. Yeah. I got really good at Street Fighter. That was my jam. I had the NES back in the Nintendo Entertainment System, the OG, and it was all about Street Fighter for like the longest time. My buddy had a bunch more games. We would play games like Rampage or Rampart. Those are my two favorites. And these are like other racing games. Like there was an RC game, like a radio control racing game.
Yeah.
You have a tiny little track.
RC Pro AM. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's the one. Oh man, I loved it. And we would freeze frame with these horrible 8-bit graphics or whatever they were and draw like the dudes. Like, remember Bad Dudes? Did you ever play Bad Dudes?
I remember the game, but I never played it. I don't think.
Come on, all the art for that. That was like a big thing for me growing up. The video game art.
Yeah, the Sega Genesis was my jam because we didn't have much money growing up. So Sega Genesis was we had a Nintendo. Then we ended up having Sega, but then as everyone got, Nintendo 64 and PlayStations and stuff, I was still just playing this Nintendo, um, and then picking up new games at garage sales and stuff like that. So that's why my sports knowledge ends at like 1997. Like that's when the last NHL game, the last Madden game, and all that stuff for Sega Genesis was.
Nice. Yeah, I have a segment for my show here. We're gonna do this. This sounds like fun. Okay, this is just goofiness. Totally not for real. This isn't for real, is it? So I have some followers from my channel that has no actual followers. Here's one. It says here, quantum potatoes taste like chicken. Androgynous. Looks like an interesting follower. I don't know what androgynous is all about. I think there's a bit of a flag down there or something, but quantum potatoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Friday McGold guy says pooping in the woods is better with friends.
Been
Always.
Been there in the army. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, at least you have someone to help you out if you happen to get some poison oak down there. Yeah. Doomer Boomer says it's a post Windows 7 world. He's keeping in touch with the times.
Doomer Boomer looks a lot like the guy selling us sheds a while ago.
It's the same artist, actually. I won't lie. Yeah. Ticked Instaface bot says life without Wi-Fi is 8-bit side scrolling. Whoa, that's down there, man. That's meta. Anime Kaiju says my cat chews on dead mice and birds and then licks me affectionately. That is gross. That is gross. When you think like when your dog licks you or your cat licks you and you're like, this is the mouth of a predator that goes and eats things in the wild. Yeah. I'm with you, Anime. I don't know. She seems to be ambivalent about it, but I'm grossed out. Poopy Longstocking says, I like vampires. It reminds me that blood is the lifeblood of life. Deep thoughts by Poopy. Okay. Happy Bro Friend Guy says, I talk to trees and I know things. I bet he does. Friday McGold Guy says, I used to be an adventurer like you, but then I took a pencil to the knee.
Oof. Yeah, that'll do it.
You don't get the reference?
No, I know. What is it?
You ever played Skyrim?
No.
You never played Skyrim? Oh, Skyrim, bro. I mean, if we're talking about video games, okay, so this is the golden age of video games right now. I mean, they were good when we were kids, but yeah, it's dangerous because the games nowadays, you don't just play, like you can save them, like you were saying, you can just go forever and you can play 72 hours of a video game and it's gone. Like the time is gone, just like this. Skyrim was one of those games. You never played Skyrim?
No, our jam was, so my buddy gave me a modded Xbox that had every video game from Atari through N64 on it.
Oh, come on, that's great.
Which was cool. And my wife and I, we really got into Dragon Quest. And Dragon Quest is like, it looks a lot like Legend of Zelda. And like, so now on the Switch, we occasionally will play like the newer Dragon Quests that are like that, like a bajillion hour video game. But once the kids came, there's just like, we only have the weekends. And then when you try and do it on the weekend, you spend so much time just remembering what you were doing, like where are we and where were we trying to go right now? What part of the map did we not explore yet? Okay. And then, by the time we figure out what the hell we're doing, then we got one kid crying and waking up or, needing to do something. Oh gosh. Okay. So
it becomes stressful at that point. That sounds like stress to me. That doesn't sound like escapism.
So once those kids are out, I told them, 18, you're out of the house, and once they're gone, my wife and I, we'll just smoke a lot of weed and play Nintendo, mostly MMO, RPG games.
You're going to be some dirty hippie old people, man. You're smoking weed and playing video games at the age of 65.
Oh, it's gonna be
Sounds like a
so good. I
plan.
can't wait for our kids to come back and be like, "Mom, Dad, all you do is smoke weed and play video games." I'll be like,
Oh man, yeah. I have an uncle and an aunt, and I love them. I call them dirty hippies because they are. They're great. I go out to their place, and they live out in the country. They built their own spot. They were very successful business people, and they are living the dream right now. They're both retired, sitting pretty, and they're like growing everything you can grow, including weed plants and stuff, and like making fermented things in jars and whatever, and that's their jam. But they're not video gaming, so I think you got them beat on that one. You're going to be like one of the cool old people.
yeah, I mean, you know, we can still travel now, but yeah, like when we're older, I think we'll be homebodies, you know, and I'll still make comic books, you know, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't have to change any more diapers. That's for sure.
yeah. No, definitely not. So you gave me a PDF here. Let's see if I can screen share this thing, and we'll take a look at it. How do I screen share again? Is that it there? Nope. Oh, I used to know how to do this. Screen share. Oh, Mark, I'm an embarrassment right now. This is not good.
It happens to the best of us, you know. After, you know, I can only imagine, you know, like after 35, I feel like anytime I try and use technology, I remember my mom trying to use like a VCR as a kid. You know, she just couldn't get it to work. And it's just like, oh, there's a plateau on age.
Yeah. I literally either they changed it or I just really can't find it. Let's go for preset here. Oh, screen share. There it is. Okay, I got it. There we go. All right. Boom. Okay. And we'll look at the PDF. All right. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's my Kickstarter page. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go full so you can. Oops. Hold on. Let me fix that. We're looking at you again now here. Don't worry. I will edit this out because retardville. All right, I got to switch it up, and this is where the screen share was. The screen share the full screen?
Yeah, it looked like it to me.
Oh, it was.
So,
oh, good.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's try that again.
I think it shrunk us.
Yeah, that's. Oh, now it turned off my camera because of the screen share. Oh wow, I'm just full of awesome today. All right. Let's do. I found it either here. No, I found it through here. There we go. All right, we'll try again. Boom. Okay.
All right.
So this
Campaign
is,
page.
yeah, what are we looking at here? So this is your most recent Kickstarter, either them or us. Tell me about this. What is this comic?
So it's Samurai versus Witches in 1980s Japan. You know, for the last, you know, year and or 2 years, I guess, coming up on it, you know, been building out this like lesser known universe, you know, so everything that I write takes place in the same universe, and there's characters that overlap. And I made 8 of these mini comics, and this is the first like full length one that takes one particular story arc with a handful of the characters that we've alluded to, you know, throughout all these minis. And it takes a look at a samurai versus witch like rivalry that's, you know, happened over generations from the 1800s up until the 1980s, where it picks up. It's illustrated by Franco Luna, who's absolutely phenomenal. He's got a phenomenal colorist he works with down there in Argentina, named Nick Torres. And then my buddy Reese Jenkins, you know, showed up with that variant cover that's just absolutely incredible. So it's been a fun one to work on, and Franco is a blast to work on, especially given the fact that me and him have made quite a few books together now. We've only released 2. We've finished 3. And I guess if you count either them or us, you know, we've finished 4. But he's the kind of person that, you know, I give him a lot of creative freedom with the Marvel method. You know, I'll tell him the first panel and the last panel of a page, or maybe a scene that spans a few pages, and I'm like, go wild in between, you know. So And even to the point where, yeah, he changed the ending on Either Them or Us. When I got the pages back, I was like, this is not what I wrote. And he was like, it's better. And I was like, yeah, it is better. Like I looked at it um, and it's just great because to have a relationship where, um, you're working with somebody long enough that they know what your intent is. They know the kind of story you want to tell. And when they see an opportunity to change something, because he wants to see the book successful, I want to see the book successful, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to make it better. And then Mark's going to love this. It wasn't like anything where there was even like a second debate on that. It was just like, man, oh, dude, I'm just so glad you're involved in this. That you had the confidence to carry this story as a visual storyteller to a place that I never had imagined in the script.
So cool. Yeah. I mean, witches versus samurais in a manga style. Yeah. I'm liking
yeah.
that.
Yeah. I don't know how you would describe his art style.
It's manga-ish. I mean, that one page there with the anyway, there was a fighting page that really struck me as I not all of it is manga style, but there's I think that influence creeps into like everything comic book these days, manga.
Yeah, I think with him, so with all the illustrators I worked with, so Andrea, I think his specialization is like psychedelic scenes. So anytime that something weird and psychedelic, like that dude does not need me to tell him what somebody tripping balls looks like. Kieran Quinn, he does the Death Wish comic, like here's a race scene. Like he does not need to tell me. I don't need to tell him what chaos looks like on a page. Like that dude has it down. Like, his stuff is so detailed. And then
so awesome.
Same thing with Franco with action scenes, like I tell him, here's where one person comes in and they're going to fight these people. And I need it to end like this. And what he comes back with is just always like blows me away. I may give some pointers in terms of, hey, the fight's going to look like it's going to go this way, but it's going to end up going that way. But almost like pro wrestling where they just agree on who the victor is, he just goes for it. And yeah, the stuff that he comes up with, I think, some scenes, like I'll tell him, like key moments in a fight or something like that. But for the most part, I get to receive those pages back like a reader would, where I'm just like, ooh, what's going to happen next? And I turn it out like, no way, and it's a really cool experience.
What do you think is the best thing about comics?
I've heard a lot of writers say getting pages back illustrated is like the best thing that you can experience short of like childbirth. And I kind of have to agree. You have this thing in your mind, and better, worse, or just different from how you envisioned it. Once you get those pages back and you're just like, I love this thing. It's so cool. And I can't believe that somebody took something I wrote and like made it real, like on a piece of paper. Same thing with like the variant cover art. When I talked to Reese Jenkins, he was an illustrator I've wanted to work with for a really long time, but we've never had the chance to. And he just took it upon himself one day to be like, hey, I'm going to draw you something and check your email. And he sent that to me. And I was just like, that made my month. You know what I mean? Like, it just like you made this, you thought that what I was doing was cool enough that you just made this, So, I asked him, hey, can we make this the variant cover of the comic book? And we're working together on a bunch of other stuff now, including one of the reward tiers is he's doing custom sketch covers for people. But there's something that's just, there's no other feeling like that, where somebody is a fan enough of words you put on a piece of paper that they're going to draw something kick-ass, with it.
Do you think that comics are an end to themselves, or do you think that they're a stepping stone to movies?
I'm a kind of a purist in the fact that, I mean, a movie would always be fun to make, you know, because a movie can have things like soundtracks and stuff like that that a comic book doesn't necessarily. I mean, some people do playlists with their comics, but that's hard to do, or hard to recreate that moment. Um, I try and think of comic books as an independent medium where you can do things in your comic book that you can't do anywhere else. And I use the example of, gosh, where is it? Here we go. We'll pull out a visual aid. You know, comic books have, it's the only place where when you turn a page, you know, you have like that turn page reveal. You know, that's not in a novel. So like when in this scene right here, you know, everything's backwards. You know, Chris and Sarah, they're talking about this piece of paper that's got a map in it, and say, okay, let's open it up. And then when you open it up, you know, you're actually holding the map. You see the thumbs here, you know, like, and you're seeing it the way he would see it, you know. And same thing anytime that you open a creepy door, you know, like, and there may or may not be a monster behind it, you got to put it right there so that when you turn the page, you get that feeling like of an actual jump scare. And Franco actually pulled that off with his last book, Goodnight. He this creepy, weird suspense book. And my favorite review we got from that was somebody said, just finished Goodnight by Franco and peed a little bit in my pants, you know. And I was like, I posted that to social media. This is the best endorsement we've had on a book so far. And yeah, I mean, so I am a purist in the fact that, yeah, I think comics are a unique art form. You can do things in comic books. Also, you know, using the example of Wolverine, you know, Wolverine looks so cool in that yellow spandex suit that he wears. Can you imagine putting that on the big screen, like in that yellow spandex? It would look so stupid, you know. You know,
it's so true. Things don't need to be realistic in comics. Like in fact, they work better when they're about color and design and not functionality. If you try to make everything super realistic, I'm struggling with that these days with the concept art. Like, yeah, I want to have like proper armor, but no, it doesn't translate well. Everything gray and brown, yeah, really doesn't really work on the printed page for me.
Yeah, and I think certain concepts, you know, there's a guy, Kevin Delgado. He's got a book where it's a cat that solves crime in the 90s, and it's addicted to cocaine. That's never going to fly as a movie, but it's so good as a comic book, you know. And Bigfoot Knows Karate. That's a great book. You know, like if someone said, "Hey, you're gonna see Bigfoot Knows Karate at the movie coming out," you'd be like, "Is this like Snakes on a Plane, or, you know, like Sharknado?" You know, it's not necessarily going to work, you know, in movies.
You never know, man. Yeah, they did make Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it was awesome. I recall. You never know. Man,
a lot of people trash on number 2, you know, just because it had Vanilla Ice in it. I thought that movie was fantastic. Everyone
I get
remembers
it.
Everyone remembers that the kid Super Shredder, like at the end, you're just like, oh,
they were.
God.
The movies were schlock, and they were the best schlock ever because of the animatronics. And the people who were in those suits, they actually did like spin kicks. It was great. It's a good time.
Yeah.
I don't understand how kids like Power Rangers, but apparently they did. I thought Power Rangers were ridiculous. But you talk to Doug Knight and you say Power Rangers were garbage, he'll like take your head off, man.
Yeah. They're fighting words. Yeah.
For sure. Well, Mark Bernal, we have reached the time, and I promised you we'd have a hard out here at 4:00. So, man, thank you. That's 4:00 my time. That is. Anyway.
Yeah. I think we're at the same. Yeah, we're in the same time zone. But yeah, dude, it's always fun when our paths cross, and I really appreciate, you know, you sitting around and shooting the shit and talking comics with me, man.
So great, man. Yeah, like I'll be making the rounds down there eventually. I'm gonna get my comic done at some point. I got a lot of things on my plate, so things have slowed up, but they're working. And I love what you're doing, man. I love checking out your Insta feed, and it always makes me smile when I see you at Comic Cons with like people like Dan Price and whoever, and just like, it's good. I will second his endorsement. Say go to more cons. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna see him this weekend, and I do have to get Toronto planned booked because Doug Knight is going to be tattooing me.
No way.
Yeah, I'm gonna get Kai some tattoo. So I'm pretty stoked about it.
Nice. So where can people reach you online, and do you have any cons booked? What are your plans?
Yeah, so this weekend, 28th, 29th, 30th, we'll be at Baltimore Comic Con, and we'll be releasing a con list for next year because we're partnering with Comics Wellspring to start going to more and more conventions. The best place that we start is lesserknowncomics.com. There's a landing page right there that'll bring you right to our current Kickstarter. I think our best social media platform is Instagram, so that's just at Lesser Known Comics. And then for people on Twitter, at Lesser K Comics. Yeah, I always encourage people, like, don't be a stranger. If you got questions, DM us. If you're or just wanted to know, how we do or why we do certain things. Like, definitely, shoot us a message. It doesn't really take us that long to get back to people.
Right on. So this probably won't be out into the wild until next week, so they wouldn't be able to know you're at this Comic-Con this coming weekend. Are there any other cons booked up for the next couple months?
Ooh, not that I know offhand. So I got some more scheduling to do. So, but what I can say that we'll have going shortly after this launches is It's a Horror Show by Jade Louder. Will be live on Instagram. So if you go, or live on Kickstarter. So if you go to lesserknowncomics.com, we'll have a redirect for that. And dude just has amazing style, and it's his first book that he's doing with us. Great guy, based out of Montana, and he's going to be doing a ton of stuff with Lesser Known Comics. So that'll be a Kickstarter worth checking out.
Sweet. All right, man. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you, brother.